home-cooked classics.
Right now, we're in the geographical heart of the United States, the land of big sky, endless prairies, wheat, corn, cattle, and home on the range. This is the Kansas-Missouri border, where the great trails westward began. About 150 years ago, hopeful young immigrants in covered wagons set out to settle America, and using the bounty of the land and the skills from their forefathers from many nations, they would go on to create what would become known as American cooking. Hi, I'm Bill Boggs, and I'm coming to you from the set of the Simon Super Chef Live Celebrity Chefs Tour, and this is Jennifer Bushman. Jennifer, you're a chef, and you have your own cooking school. So what is one of your own personal home-cooked classic memories?
I can remember baking cookies with my grandmother. She would pull out this old beat-up KitchenAid mixer from 1943, and we would bake cookies together. I always tell that story when I'm baking.
Well, let's hear another story right now.
My mom bought me a cookbook that I have right here.
How old were you when she gave you Junior Cookbook?
She gave me that when I was 11 years old in 1973.
So you were running the kitchen at age 11 or 12 in your house?
Pretty much, and I think that she got me that just to help me run it a little bit better.
Rick Finney, tell us about this dish. What is it?
Well, these are my Uncle Rich's sauerkraut balls, and the recipe is about 70 years old. I've had these ever since I can remember. On Christmas Eve, all the relatives used to get us kids together, put us on our PJs and take us over to Uncle Rich's house and put us in the basement with a bunch of soda pop and deep fry the sauerkraut balls until we all got so full we just fell asleep. And when we fell asleep, they took advantage of us and they went to our houses and put the presents under the Christmas tree so they didn't have to worry about us catching them doing it and ruining the Santa Claus thing. So after we'd wake up, they'd haul us home and Santa Claus had already come, and that's what we did every year at Christmas Eve.
So these sauerkraut balls also have a hypnotic effect on children.
Well, they must.
Knock them out.
I didn't like sauerkraut, I didn't think, until my parents finally told me there was actually sauerkraut in them. So I don't know what they told me I was eating at the time. But.
So this started with your uncle, and then it went to your father, and then your father passed it on to you. You want to tell us a little bit about what is in the dish?
Well, it is a family secret. There obviously is sauerkraut in there, and some hamburger, and I'll give you a little onion, and there's some various spices and other things in there that we'll have to negotiate a little later.
I mean, how many people at this stage know the recipe for these
at this stage
balls?
I'm the last one.
You're the last one.
Right.
So will you give it to us for our website?
I checked with my family, and they said that as long as we called it Uncle Rich's sauerkraut balls, that we'd be glad to give it to you.
All right, may I have the recipe, please?
You sure
We're going to put this on the Home Cooked Classic website.
There you go.
It's got a couple of eggs in there.
Couple of eggs.
Thank you.
Couple other things.
Now I know how I'm going to fall asleep this Christmas Eve.
Right.
Eating them.
And they're fun to have the kids help make, too.
Debbie Gold, our celebrity chef of the day, is from the James Beard Award-winning 40 Sardines restaurant in Kansas City. She has a tough job of giving one of today's classics a special honor.
I'm going to be checking out all the home-cooked dishes that are brought here today, and we are going to honor one by putting it on the menu.
The recipe for this Swedish Tiering spans a century of baking tradition for Cindy Falk and her daughter Andrea.
When I think of this recipe, I think of my mother because she taught me how to make this for my first 4-H demonstration back when I was about in the 4th grade. This is such a sentimental recipe, too, that I passed on to my daughters, and I hope someday that they'll pass it on to their families.
All my friends love to have me bake for them, and, you know, because a lot of kids don't know how to cook, so it's fun to, you know, teach my friends how to bake as well.
It's a wonderful recipe, and I know that the base of it is potato, which is different because we don't use potatoes as much. Tell me about that.
Well, the potatoes we grew in our family garden, and I think that's one reason why my mother made this recipe a lot, because back on the farm we always had a large garden.
The potato dough recipe starts by dissolving yeast in lukewarm water. Cindy adds 3 beaten eggs, sugar, salt, lemon zest, butter, bread flour,
and potato water.
So is this the water that you've cooked the potatoes in?
Yes.
Okay, great.
I've just drained the water, and then we're going to add the special ingredient, the potatoes, right from the garden. And they're, of course, mashed without seasoning.
The dough is kneaded for 10 to 12 minutes, covered and left to rise for an hour. It's rolled out into a 9 by 20 inch shape, lightly brushed with butter and covered with a mixture of cinnamon, flour, brown sugar, and chopped pecans.
And then this is a fun part. You start at the long end and you roll it towards you. And with each roll, you kind of take your fingers and kind of seal it. And then with your fingertips, you seal the edges together.
Oh, I see.
So that's really important because if you don't have a good seal, then the filling's going to leak out.
Place on a slightly oiled baking sheet and form into a ring.
You use kitchen shears and make cuts about 1 inch apart, and as you can see, I'm cutting to almost to the bottom of the roll.
So you're leaving just a little bit, you're not quite cutting through, and then that way, as it bakes, it's going to kind of fan out, isn't it?
Yes. My mother did something different, so I think this is a little unique. She would take one roll and turn it on its side, facing out, and then she would twist the other one and face it towards the center. And that kind of gives a twist on this Swedish Tiering. So out and then in.
Gorgeous. Bake for 20 minutes in a 375-degree oven and let cool.
Okay, next we're going to take the frosting, and it's just powdered sugar and milk and a little bit of the cherry juice.
Oh, okay. I wondered how you got it red.
Gives it a little cherry flavor. And all you do is just drizzle it on.
That looks great.
And this is really pretty to make. Like I said, my mother made this at holiday time, at Christmas time, to give us gifts. And I think with the pink frosting and the red cherries, it looks very festive.
Garnish with those pecans and
use half cherries and just place them around also evenly, just to add a little decoration.
Well, I think that this recipe is a wonderful recipe, not just for your family, but for all of our families. Thank you all very much for sharing this with us.
Thank you. It's been fun.
Judith Fertig, the author of Prairie Home Cooking, lives in Kansas, and she's studied the area's food and its history.
I sometimes liken this area to a quilt, not only in the landscape itself. As you're flying over, you see the prairies, you see the lakes and streams, you see the farmland, you know, each field that is a square, but it's also a patchwork of different cooking styles. I think today with the stories that we're going to be hearing, some of them are going to be stories of young men that went out to hunt with their grandfathers and fathers, and this is a tradition, especially around Thanksgiving, and they still hunt today. You'll be talking with women who maybe baked something with grandmothers and they're still baking that thing today, or other people that have adapted a recipe that's been in their family for generations to kind of give it more of a modern take for the way we like to eat now.
Historians Nancy Lewis and Ann Mallison enjoy making dishes at home based on the actual recipes from the 1804 Lewis and Clark expedition. They bake Lewis and Clark's sourdough bread, they make the expedition's berry pudding, and
buffalo hump roast, typical of what they would have for a protein source.
Absolutely, and they either had to have every day for their expedition 4 deer, an elk and a deer, or 1 buffalo. And so this is the example of the buffalo that they might
So
have.
you mean that the hunters would go out with a list?
Yes.
We need 4 deer, 1 elk. That's what they would do with a list with a gun?
We have to have this much meat or we're going to go hungry.
This is the prime cut of the buffalo, would be the hump.
So Lewis and Clark got this part themselves.
Absolutely.
Well,
How is this prepared?
It depends on whether we're telling you how we prepare it, because of course they would prepare it very differently, having an open fire and all that. But we use a couple of cups of beef broth and some salt and pepper, and basically the buffalo hump carries its own because it is such a very good cut of meat.
Wonderful cut. I can't let you get away with just Lewis and Clark food when you told me that growing up you ate
squirrel and dumplings. That was my very favorite food. And you know, squirrel is a very fatty meat. It's kind of like dog. It has a lot. It has a lot of fat on it.
Didn't know either one really.
And so you have to send a hunter out to get a squirrel. And once they get them, then you skin it and cut it into pieces, put it in a pot, boil it until it's just very, very tender, and then drop the dumplings in.
And then go,
yum,
that's
yum,
a squirrel.
yum.
When's the last time you ate a squirrel?
Oh, I was probably about maybe 25 or 30.
So it hasn't survived your entire adult life?
Well, I don't know. I have a few squirrels that I have in mind we maybe need to add to the squirrel and dumpling regime, but...
You can keep your yard clean that way. Thanks.
Another Christmas Eve tradition is Franz Stanton's Hilgagi, which goes back almost 100 years to the family's native Denmark. The recipe?
There's a Zwieback, which is a toast that comes pre-packaged, and there's different varieties. There's cinnamon rusk and Zwieback that are German and Scandinavian, available at specialty stores, and mixed with butter, melted butter, and a little bit of brown sugar and cinnamon, and then layered alternately with the homemade applesauce, and then whipped cream on the top, and then this is a Danish lingonberry jam that you see dotted on the top.
What memories are associated with this dish with you?
Well, the special thing about this for Christmas Eve is that there's a single almond hidden somewhere within the dish, and then it's served individually on plates, and someone at the table has this nut, and this person is going to win a prize. So the children, of course, always wanted to win the prize, and the adults would play games, pretending that they didn't have it if they did, and pretending they did have it when they didn't, and you'd all look at each other and giggle, and it would stretch out for a while, and it's great fun still.
Yeah.
A lot of great fun.
So we can be certain that we know this Christmas Eve in your house, this dish will be served in that way as it has been for decade after decade after decade. What is the prize?
The prize is a big box of chocolate-covered cherries.
And somehow a child always wins the prize?
No, not always, but they usually eat the chocolate-covered cherries whether they won or not.
Judith Verteg's daughter, Sarah, is a lawyer who loves to cook. So we took her back to the kitchen where she grew up to recreate a longtime family favorite, vegetable garden pot roast.
Oh, I bet you've washed a lot of dishes in this kitchen over the years.
Oh, you have no idea.
If food could have a legacy, what's the legacy of vegetable garden pot roast in the Verteg household?
Well, this recipe will forever remind me of my paternal grandmother. She's maintained a diary of sorts of all of our favorite family recipes. And the recipes are still good today, and she's embellished the book with pictures of the family. This one is actually me a long time ago. That was one of my first recipes, and this has always been a cherished part of our cooking tradition.
Where did she get the recipe originally?
Well, she saw something similar to this in a magazine, I think back in the 60s, and thought it looked pretty, and tried it out, and over time developed it into what we see today.
Do you cook much at home?
I cook all the time, actually.
Right.
Yeah.
But you're not a professional chef?
No, no, not by any stretch of the imagination.
You're not even playing one on TV?
Oh, no,
You're
no,
total amateur chef?
Total amateur.
Your mother taught you to cook?
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
Did she force you to learn to cook, or did you just kind of want to learn?
I wanted to learn, and a lot of trial and error involved there, but you learn by watching, so I learned by watching my mom.
Well, let's watch you.
Heat a light oil with a high smoke point, insert a sirloin tip in a pot, and brown on facing sides. And use a pot you know and love.
I'm picky about the pots I use. I like to use pots that I trust. I know how they perform. I happen to love this one. That's why I'm using it.
This is a trustworthy pot.
It absolutely is.
What's the story behind this pot?
Well, my mother gave it to me, and it's one of my favorites.
Is that the sort of thing you get as a Christmas gift? Jammed in your stocking? A cooking utensil?
In my family, yes. It definitely is.
Combine your choice of vegetables like diced zucchini and yellow squash, diced red onions, halved cherry tomatoes, sliced peppers and olives. Add a cup of wine to the browned beef and...
Well, we're going to put it in the oven. We have the oven preheated to 350 degrees. If you'll grab the oven door for me. I'm going to pop it in here and let it go for about 2.5 hours.
2.5 hours?
That's right.
And then we wait here for 2.5 hours?
No, there's this thing called a timer.
The finished cooled roast will be sliced just part way down and stuffed with marinated vegetables.
And then after we're done stuffing the pot roast, what you need to do is cover it and put it in the refrigerator until it chills down. And once it's nice and cool, you can take it out and serve it to your family.
For a lawyer, you cook very well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, Bill, I do have a surprise for you. My mother is actually here. She helped me make one of these pot roasts earlier on today. Mom, come on in. And this is the finished product.
That is really beautiful. Just stop and think about this. Here's a recipe that spans at least 70 years in your family.
That's right. That's right. A perennial favorite. And it's, I'm sure it'll be a favorite too. Anyone who cooks it.
You have a fork?
You know, I think we could round one up for you.
Susan and Bill Ford have dozens of these for game dishes because Bill is a hunter.
How did you originally get involved in hunting, Bill?
Mostly with my dad originally. We hunted not a ton, but you know, several times growing up, and then when I was in college, I roomed with a guy who was from western Kansas. We actually painted our room to look like his truck, a two-tone painted room. And we would go out and we'd actually bring the game back for our cook at the fraternity house, and she'd cook it for us, and we would learn how to cook it ourselves.
We've adapted a lot of recipes to our tastes and to the meats. You cook game, birds, and venison a little bit differently than you do store-bought meats, but we've come up with some very good recipes, and our family loves it. This is venison kabobs, and we marinated the venison overnight in a combination of wine and various spices. And then we simply put it on the skewers with a few vegetables and grilled it over the coals and served it on a bed of rice.
And that's a typical nice healthy dinner at your house.
Yeah, we actually ate the last of our pheasant out of the freezer last week. We were thinking about bringing pheasant this evening, but we used up the last one.
Fast Eddie Marin is a car racing metalworker who loves barbecue. He's taken home cooking to an award-winning level and teaches home cooks with his traveling college of barbecue knowledge.
Tell me a little bit about the history of barbecue in Kansas City.
Kansas City was a area of the country where the cattle drives came to. So in Kansas City, this became a major rail hub, and all the major packing plants were here. And so this is where they processed all those animals. And a lot of the immigrants, of course, they were not very good jobs, and a lot of the immigrants migrated to Kansas City and worked in those packing plants. And what they were able to do is take the scraps home that they would normally throw away, and they made makeshift smokehouses, and they would slow cook them barbecue style. And that's what basically helped make Kansas City famous in barbecue.
Eddie cooks beef brisket that's been wet-aged 40 days. He leaves 1/8 to a 1/4-inch trim and prepares it in 2 pieces, one of which will be the popular burnt end.
So if you see how this fat mark line right here is,
right.
You take your knife and you come down, and then it's going to be like a fillet.
Your knife is so sharp too, I can see that. And you're just going right along the meat line.
Right.
Yep.
Right along the meat line.
And how much fat are you trying to keep on there?
I like to leave about 1/4 to 1/8 of an inch of trim is what I like to do. If you see how much fat is involved in the point end right here, that's to me is better than eating a ribeye. That's pretty much right there is ready to go. I'm ready to season that up and put it on.
Great.
And actually when it goes into the cooker, it'll come out very dark, and what you want to do is cut that directly on a 90 degrees across the grain. The grain's running this direction, so what you can do is you can take it and you can notch the end of it just like this here, so you'll know how to cut that after it comes off.
Eddie's dry rub includes sugar, salt, paprika, cumin, allspice, and oregano.
Depending on how salty a flavor that you have, how much of it you want to put on, but that's about how I like it, just
nice
like that right there. Yeah, this is a 100% pellet, wood pellet.
Wow.
We'll cook this for about 10 hours at 250 degrees.
Fantastic.
Here's the point.
Okay, so you've let that cook a little bit longer.
Right, and then here's the flank.
Here's the flank.
Right there.
Wow. So does this get trimmed, or you just slice it up and
we're ready? We're ready to serve.
Woo, this looks great.
This is ready to go.
And how much did our crew like the brisket? Thanks, Eddie.
The story of Christmas sausage is a quintessential American success story, and it all starts with your grandfather as a home cook in Croatia.
Right. He came to America as a young man. His parents didn't want him to fight in World War I, actually. So they sent him to America. He came here, didn't know anyone in this country, could not speak the language at all, and he started out making sausages in the back room of a grocery store.
These are recipes that he had learned at home.
Right. These are recipes.
Probably at his mother's side.
Exactly.
Right.
This is the original smoked Polish sausage that we started our business on. This is what my grandfather, one of the recipes that he brought from the old country. This is a Cajun andouille sausage, which is a spicy sausage that a lot of people use to make gumbo and red beans and rice and such. This is a summer sausage right here that we make. This is a German bratwurst that's very popular in the area. This is our Italian sausage. This is actually a German smoked garlic knockwurst. And this is a marinated smoked pork shoulder that we make. The next item is a blood sausage that we've made. My grandfather's been making that since 1939. And the last item is a barbecued sausage that we sell to a lot of the restaurants here in town.
Danny Williamson is a turkey farmer who loves to cook for his family of 6. His classics include turkey deviled eggs and turkey salad, using meat from his award-winning heritage turkeys.
We raise the old-fashioned breed, the ones that they raised in the 20s and 30s before the broad-breasteds came along. They're raised what we call pasture-raised. They get to go out on grass, they eat bugs. They're not confined in a building or anything. They're free to run, jump, play, do whatever they want to do.
Danny invented the turkey roll-up. Saute turkey meat, onions, and minced garlic until brown, and then spread on rolled out dough.
Put your sliced Swiss cheese on it, and then just start at one end.
And roll.
And you just roll.
Tell me,
up.
what's the story of your dough there?
It's just simply a bread dough, a loaf bread dough that you just let it rise for a little bit, and you spread it out, and just roll it up. Flip the top over.
Right now it's looking like a giant calzone.
That's about Then you cook this in a 350 oven for about 20 minutes until it's golden brown on the outside. And this is what it looks like it's after it's been in the oven for about 20 minutes.
Well, let's slice it up, okay?
Okay.
How many people do you attempt to feed with a giant turkey roll-up like this?
Oh, you can feed a lot with this. I feed my whole family of 6 with this, so you could just open it up.
And what are some of the occasions where you've served this over the years?
Just family gatherings.
Boy, that looks really good. And you can toast it, you can reheat it, you can do whatever you want with it.
And it's good, really good with a spicy mustard sauce on it also.
Excellent. Danny, you can talk turkey with us anytime.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate it.
Flo Noeer and Joe Gray prepare dishes that reflect their Cherokee heritage.
We lived on the reservation, and there was 13 children. My mother and my father worked. We were raised by my grandmother, and our basics were the fry bread, the tortillas, beans, and potatoes. So that's what we grew up on.
Joe Gray's Cherokee grandmother taught him how to make knutschi.
Well, tell me about this knutschi. What actually is this? What is the preparation here?
It's just ground hickory nuts. You get a mortar and pestle and crush up the hickory nuts, shell it out. They would make it into a paste and then form it into a ball so it would keep. And then well, now we put it in the freezer, but back then it would just keep fine. And then during the winter time, they would bring it out, put it in a pot of boiling water, and make it up.
Thanks a lot for coming and sharing your stories with us.
Thank you.
Debbie Gold, our celebrity chef, has picked her favorite home-cooked classic.
The Kurtzman sausages were the best. They're going on the menu.
Congratulations to the Christman family.
You're Joe Jr. Did you always know you were going to be in the sausage business with his tough dad growing up?
I thought I would eventually, but I couldn't get in until after they were ready to retire because there wasn't enough room for 3 families.
Now, and how about you? You're the 3rd generation Christman. Did you always know you were going into the sausage business?
Well, actually, I thought I kind of wanted to get into the restaurant business, but then I saw a good thing, so I went into the sausage business.
So we got a family tradition here. How do we carry this on?
Well, I think maybe my son in a few years might get into the business.
So this is the 4th generation.
You want a bite? Take a bite, Jake.
Good luck.